For many of you, maybe if I say the word Odessa, you think of the metropolis on the Black Sea, almost on the border with Romania. Odessa is also Little Odessa. It's also a neighborhood in Brighton Beach, an area of New York named for that reason. It's populated by many Ukrainian exiles in the United States. But Odessa also has another meaning. At least I had it, and even today it's still debated. It's an acronym, it's a code, it stands for Organisation der ehemaligen Schutzstaffel-Angehörigen. Translated into German, it means Organization of Former Members of the Schutzstaffel, the SS. It's an entity that has been much debated, but whose name has repeatedly come up in what is one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. That is the escape of Nazi war criminals and those guilty of crimes against humanity to South America and the Middle East. Odessa was founded, at least according to some historical investigations, carried out by the famous Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal and the Argentine historian Ucchigoni. He is the author of a remarkable investigative book titled La Autentica Odessa, known in Italian as Operazione Odessa, published 18 years ago. Odessa was founded while the war was still ongoing. It's August 1944. The Allies have landed in Normandy. For a couple of months, they've been in Italy, almost a year now. They've started moving up the peninsula. From Sicily, they've been heading straight toward the Apennines and to the right. The Red Army is advancing after winning the pitched Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in our contemporary history. And indeed, they're pushing to break through toward the west. Germany is on the defensive then on all fronts, but inside Germany there is someone who has absolutely no qualms about the future, and above all, has no illusions. They are the leaders of the Nazi regime, who, after the assassination attempt on Hitler, carried out less than a month earlier, on July 20th, 1944, at the Wolf's Lair by Count von Stauffenberger. Well, the leaders understand that the end is approaching. It is what, in the mythology so dear to Hitler, is the Götterdämmerung, the twilight of the gods. By now, they are heading toward, in fact, the complete defeat of Germany. And clearly, the high-ranking officials are afraid. They know that capture awaits them, and a trial before the victorious powers, and very likely a harsh death sentence, either by hanging or by firing squad. They want to protect themselves out of fear, but it's not only top officials who are concerned. There's also another group of Germans who are afraid, the Industrialists, because like every war, the Second World War also generates profit. Those who manufacture weapons, those in the chemical industry, definitely have booming business. In fact, the Getarben, Vonapel, Siemens, and many other companies of the Third Reich accumulated immense wealth, and these industrialists are afraid of losing them completely, with possible seizures. A meeting is held in Strasbourg between the delegates of these industrialists and officials representing the elite of both the Nazi Party and the SS. The agreement that is finalized at the end of this meeting, which lasts an afternoon, is very simple. The industrialists will finance the escape abroad of the leaders, who in return will immediately facilitate the export of capital. And later they will establish companies, factories, and workshops abroad that will draw from those funds, keeping them available overseas so they cannot be seized in any way from the industrialists making them richer. It's a two-way pact. They're trying to save both the goat of the fleeing criminal and the cabbage of the entrepreneur who's afraid of losing all his assets. From that day in August 1944, what Ucchigoni called Operation Odessa began. That is the escape abroad, both of men and of resources. From that day, large sums were deposited in various banks in Switzerland, Tangier, Beirut, and elsewhere. In some cases, they even talk about gold and silver bars, stolen from all over Europe. And those funds are used both to guarantee the escape and to provide a foundation for the future of the fugitives and their financiers. From that day on until April or May 1945, when Germany finally collapsed, many people fled. Almost everyone escaped toward the end. They waited until the very last weeks to pack their bags and leave. Some people planned everything, while others escaped in a rather daring and chaotic way. Most of the leaders were captured anyway. After all, just look at the defendants' bench at the Nuremberg trials. Some disappeared without a trace. This is the case of Erich Müller, the head of the Gestapo, the fourth office of the Reich Security Main Office, the Central Office for Reich Security, one of the two entities of the SS. He disappears without a trace, and according to what is said around, becomes the head of this mysterious organization called Odessa, which aims to help criminals escape abroad. Like him, many others escape. There is also talk of Martin Bormann's escape, even though in reality, according to investigations carried out a few years ago on human remains found near the Führerbunker in Berlin, it seems that Bormann actually died during the battle for Berlin in the final hours while Hitler was committing suicide. He was actually trying to escape, and he was hit directly by an anti-tank grenade. So we can rule out Bormann. Müller, however, is officially on the run and will be tried in absentia at Nuremberg, obviously found guilty. Like him, many are fleeing. Members of Tito's SS are fleeing. Doctors like Joseph Mengele, the diabolical angel of Auschwitz, are fleeing. The man who is responsible for an infirmary barrack in the concentration camp, of medical experiments that go far beyond simple research. He conducts experiments on twins, and not only on them. Experiments that lead to the atrocious death of many children and teenagers. Elements from the concentration camps also escape, including guards and others. Some disguise themselves as German soldiers, because after all, they know very well what awaits them, and there's a persistent rumor going around. Yes, starting from March 1945, after the discovery of the first camps, that especially the Anglo-Americans don't capture them, the SS, they shoot them on the spot. So they prefer to take off their uniforms with the silver twin skulls, disguise themselves as German soldiers, and surrender to the Allied forces because the Soviet ones are definitely more feared, and declare themselves POWs. You can expect between 12 and 24 months of captivity in a camp, and then the possibility to rebuild your life in a camp. Some choose to stay in Germany. They give false identities. They claim to have been born in remote villages in eastern Silesia or East Prussia, villages that in 1947 are beyond the Iron Curtain. So it's impossible to verify the truth. Or knowing that there might be a bounty on their head, because of the arrest warrant, they choose to flee. And where do they run? South. They head south. They get in touch with their comrades, and they begin a silent, disguised exodus through Austria and Italy. The starting point of the escape route, also called Ratolino, meaning rat line, the rat route, begins in Munich. From Munich, some former soldiers, some even former Waffen SS who have declared a false identity and now work for the American Army, load them onto trucks, hiding them. Some of these war criminals. They first take them to Austria. From there, they usually take them to Bregenz near Lake Constance. Then they can cross into Switzerland. They continue their journey to Merano in Italy. In Merano, there is the first organized collection center, and this is something that was managed by the Franciscan friars. It's not that the Franciscan friars are pro-Nazi, God forbid. However, there was a period right after the Second World War when the Catholic Church perhaps interpreted the concept of Christian charity a bit too broadly. So it helped a bit all those people who were on the run. It helps Nazi war criminals, and of course it also helps people who are displaced, who don't have a home, who have been driven from their own lands. It also helps the Croatian Ustaše, because within what Goni calls Operation Odessa, the Croatians are also included, the collaborators of the Nazi invaders in former Yugoslavia, led by their Poglami, their leader, however you want to call him. Okay, they also escape towards a place that becomes friendly to them, that is South America, especially Argentina. Because in Argentina, since 1946, Juan Domingo Perón has come to power, a strong man, a former military officer, and a longtime friend of Nazi Germany, even though he maintained a reserved attitude to avoid clearly incurring the wrath of the United States of America. Perón opened Argentina's doors, granting those organizing the escape network several blank Argentine passports. Just fill them out, add the photo and booklet, and you're done. Let's return to Murano, where several war criminals were present. One name stands out: Adolf Eichmann, architect of the final solution. They passed through facilities run by Franciscan religious and others, and from there they are sent to Milan, Rome, or Genoa. Milan and Rome are centers for collection and further distribution. Genoa is the starting point, a port where many board the steamships heading to Argentina. They already have an Argentine passport in their pocket or a Red Cross pass, so from there they can easily leave for a new identity. How do they get this documentation? It's clear that they can't declare. We talked about Eichmann. Eichmann can't declare that I am Adolf Eichmann, born in Austria, became a war criminal. They can't do it. They adopt a stratagem. That is the one used by the Italian South Tyroleans of German language. Almost all of them are war criminals, anti-Nazis who are fleeing, Italians born in South Tyrol. They are not actually, they are only pretending to be, because they decide to take advantage of this subtle linguistic and ethnic barrier that allows them to pretend to be something they are not. This is exactly the case with Eichmann, who had a document produced stating that his name was Ricardo Clement, born in South Tyrol, occupation laborer, and so he escapes. He's not the only one. There are many others who use this method. There's also a bishop, Alois Udall, a bishop with an Austrian name who, for better or worse, sides with them. He helps them escape a bit, and with him there's another prelate of Croatian origin, Father Krunoslav Draganovic, who instead helps the Croatians, helping Pavelic and all the others to escape. Both from the Fano prison camp, run by the British, and from the searches of the Yugoslav political police who want to bring justice, want to justify the war criminals' escape. Also because, among other things, Pavelic escapes not empty-handed, but with the treasure of the National Bank. Right? Years before, when he took his place. All these criminals have various escape routes. One, as we've already said, is silver. And where do they end up? For the most part, let's think about Eichmann, who would be captured by the Israelis in Buenos Aires. Let's think about Erich Frick, the executioner of the Ardeatine massacre, who was discovered in the early 1990s. A journalist, also in Argentina. Some escaped to Chile, some to Paraguay, and some to Brazil. In short, the South. Some go to Madrid because, after all, Francoist Spain has always had a good relationship with Nazi Germany. There are few, and in the end, many of them prefer to move to South America. Some go to the Middle East. They make arrangements to migrate to Egypt rather than to Syria, which has recently become independent. Here, too, it's a small migration. It becomes a bit more significant in the following years. Some, as mentioned, remain in Germany, with a false identity, declaring names, maybe of acquaintances or former comrades who died somewhere, and of whom, obviously, there can be no trace. All the devastation and bombings Germany endured make it harder to rebuild the registries. Computers didn't exist back then, right? And some instead with their real identity. That's the case, for example, of Bruno Streichenbach. Streichenbach is a high-ranking SS officer. He was the chief of staff of the Reichssicherheitshauptamt. He was one of the top commanders within the SS command structure. Well, Streichenbach even manages to get a job as commercial director in a department store in Abo. He only loses it at the end of the 1960s because the truth comes out and it's discovered who he is, what he did during the war. And clearly, public opinion shows a certain discomfort about something like this. But one wonders why. In Germany, a country that, let's remember, remained divided for almost 50 years after the end of the war. A country divided by all that happened, for whom, in Germany, there was still an attempt to cover up someone's escape or, in any case, not to investigate further. There is a word that has been used for a long time in Germany, and that is camaraderie. A distorted idea according to which the SS killers, even those in the Waffen SS, meaning the combat units, were to be treated like those who served in the Heer, Kriegsmarine, or Luftwaffe, simply for doing their duty. For a wrong flag, for a wrong cause. He had simply obeyed orders to fight with weapons in hand. This is something that digs deep into the conscience of Germany, especially of West Germany, and that allows so many war criminals to be treated as equals by their fellow citizens, who deep down are a bit ashamed of what was said, a bit guilty for what happened, and a bit believe that in the end, everyone was under the same flag. Then there are the last cases, those who live under a false name. Some of them will be discovered. Around the mid-1960s, these people will have to flee from Germany. Arrested and tried, no one was sentenced to death, as the Federal Republic of Germany lacks the death penalty. There is no mistake. It's quite a peculiar story. That of Odessa, the Respin, the Spider, the Rattleline, whatever we want to call it. Some historians say that perhaps Odessa is more of a myth, not denying at all that there were structures that allowed escape routes and were well organized. Others instead, like Wiesenthal, like Gogny, say that all in all, maybe there wasn't a pyramidal structure with defined roles, but the escape routes were still clearly planned and followed a precise scheme. What emerges in the end is that hundreds managed to escape justice. Who had massacred in the concentration camps? Who had shot people in the Einsatzgruppen? In Belarus, or rather in Ukraine? All these people disappeared. They disappeared, and some we never found again. Some of them even. And this, perhaps, is the thing that scares us the most nowadays. In the end, he was recruited by the Anglo-Americans themselves. Think of Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's commando who freed Mussolini from Gran Sasso. Otto Skorzeny became a consultant for the Americans, but not only for them. Or there are others who go to work for the French until at a certain point, they also decide to disappear into thin air. It's something that, if we really think about it, is aberrant. Why does this happen? It's Cold War logic. The enemy of my enemy is my enemy. He's serious, an excellent spy, rather than a professional killer. He hates the Soviet. So I, as an Anglo-American, have every interest in working with him and making use of his services. And this is one of the darkest areas, one of the most difficult to deal with even today. After all, it's been over 75 years since the end of the Second World War, and we still haven't come to terms with all of our European past. Involved perhaps only marginally during some of history's darkest times.